Meeting May 1st, 2023. Welcome, everybody. Uh, Commissioner Mason will lead us in the pledge. Commissioner Winters will say the blessing. If you would, please stand. Amen. Thank you. All right, going to our agenda. First up, report from the mayor. Mayor Davis, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, your credit card report. Fire department wasn't used, no charges. Assessor was used 5 times. Everything's good. One restaurant receipt was not detailed, but other than that, it was good. Sheriff's Department 12 times, all good. The mayor used 1 time, all good, and EMA used 1 time, all good. The only other thing I have that's not in your packet, I passed out a copy to you. I'll explain it the best I can. This amendment makes no sense to most of you, but what I'm proposing to do is community services agencies in bad need of a vehicle that they deliver meals in their summer feeding program with, and they've called everybody about help on it. I suggested something that they've accepted, and I just hope you'll agree. We can do it now out of the 189 fund, and I made a deal on behalf of Bradley County that we will subtract that amount from their budget request. So I have lowered their budget request by $10,000 in exchange for you agreeing to buy this $10,000 used vehicle out of the 189 fund. Don't worry about the amendment. I'll explain it more in a minute. Does that make sense? And would you all be in agreement with that? It doesn't help to put it in the budget. They need it badly now because of the summer feeding program and so forth. So they need the vehicle now. This was a way of them getting the vehicle, paying for it in a way that where we have the money, and at the same time deducting it off of the budget request, which I'm doing. I'll make any kind of deal in the world to get money out of that budget request for everybody's. I'm trying to get it down, and I'm not there yet. But anyway, having said that, any questions, and then I'll explain the amendment. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we'll get a motion in a second. Real
Okay.
quick, come back to you. I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Mayor Davis.
Question, yes.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
What is their budget request?
I don't remember that, but I can tell you that it is now less than this year's amount by doing this. We're fronting them money, is what it amounts to. Their budget request went up like 2 or 3%, but this puts it below that.
Any particular
Which-
line item you're taking the 10,000 from?
All right.
Out of their budget request?
No, the way theirs works is we don't approve their budget. We actually approve a donation to them.
Oh,
And so that donation amount goes down 10,000. The requested amount goes down 10,000.
I'm sorry.
And what you're doing with this amendment, I'm proposing to buy it out of 189 where we have the money. But in 189, that's capital projects. So when I buy something out of 189, I have to have an asset to show for it. You follow me?
Yeah.
Well, in this case, I don't have an asset because we're not buying the vehicle. We're giving them the money to buy it. They have their own budget and so forth. So what this amendment does is takes it out of the 189 fund, the 791 line item, puts it in a 590, and then Renee will write a check from the 189 fund to the general fund where we will make the donation contribution to the Community Services Agency. That's just a technical thing there, and that way we're moving it where we can make a contribution and there doesn't have to be an asset to follow. I confused you enough? Does that make sense, or you have other questions?
So basically, they don't have the ability to purchase this on their own fund. They don't have a fund
No.
balance or.
Supposedly not, no. 117,420 is their request, so it becomes 107,420 if that's it. I've marked it already, but I didn't remember the amount. Um, she had asked
Oh,
how much was their
Demetrius.
request, yeah.
For some reason, I was thinking another group. I'm sorry.
Community Services Agency,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
the Meals on Wheels and the senior center and all those
Yeah, I
things that they do.
apologize, Mayor. I was
I'm
thinking
sorry,
the other group
yeah.
that
They,
does the,
they do
yeah.
the meal deliveries, and then in the summertime, they do the summer feeding program for kids, so it's adults and kids is what this was used for, to deliver the meals.
Mayor, Commissioner Offer.
Uh, that's fine with me. My question would be $10,000. What kind of vehicle they gonna get for $10,000?
Well,
To me, you're looking a
I know.
little nervous about a $10,000 truck or vehicle.
I understand what you're saying, but I hear so many of the $40,000 and $50,000 requests. When somebody's asking for 10, I promise you, I don't question it. I did not want to talk them up to 40 or 50, but no, they have found one. I don't want to be incorrect. One of the discussions was they first called us asking if we had any vehicles we were going to be getting rid of, and everything I knew of was so bad it would be like you're thinking. The city had one that was in pretty good shape, and that may be the one they got. So that would answer why the amount's like it is, because they would have given it to them at a really good price. I'm not sure that that's what they ended up doing, but I know that was in the works. My only part was, can you come up with $10,000 for us? And I said, I have a way of doing it. It'll have to go be approved with an amendment, but that's paying it out of the 189 where we have sufficient funds, but we got to do this process because we're not retaining the asset.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Commissioners, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, and that does help us $10,000 wise in the budget request. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Lori, on this one, just to get it expedited just a tad bit, we can put it on tonight, or if you'll remind me, instead of waiting for 2 weeks. For
That
the
would be
consent
good, too.
agenda. We'll go ahead and take care of this one tonight at tonight's voting session. All right, thank you, Mayor. Going into our budget amendments, the first one here, we had Susan, the director here. Yours are up first. First one, Bradley County Schools Fund 177, Education Capital Projects, $1,286,616.58. She is doing a lot here. Susan, if you'll just give us a Cliff Notes version of what you're doing, because I see everything here. You're decreasing the expenses, increasing your revenue, so it's money coming in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, this first one is for our capital projects, and we're just truing this up by the end of the year. As I told you guys a few months ago, we're trying to wrap this 177 up. It will actually still be there when we do our year end, but only hopefully to be transferring that money into the actual fund we're going to be using for the Pie Center.
So 177 won't have a fund balance any longer. All right.
At least that's the plan.
That's the plan. Thank you. All right. Any questions, or do I have a motion from Commissioner Winters? I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next budget amendment. Now we're into Fund 141, $1,500. She's decreasing expenses and increasing expenses. So she's basically moving from one line to another in the same account for payroll adjustments and physical therapy. Do I have a motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next amendment. And you see the supporting documentation there. Budget amendment we're still in 141, $857,423.97. She's increasing revenue, increasing expenses, so it's money coming in. She's itemized the expenses and all those lines right there. Anything you want to add to that, Susan? It looks like it's just
Only that this is our summer school learning camp, and we're amending that money, and that will come from the state. But we're amending it in for the revenue that we've been assigned, and then detailed what we're going to spend it on.
it was part of your projection anyway, right?
Well, not our original projection, because we just now found out how much we were getting. So that's why we're amending this in.
You have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And supporting documentation, all that like there. Next budget is still in 141, $43,540.59. Increasing revenue, decreasing expenses, decreasing the fund balance of 8,000 on your undesignated fund balance.
These are actually almost all reserves that we're moving back into the budget where we can spend it. The only exception to that is the technology funds, and we're simply moving that based on state guidelines.
At $38,878.49.
Yes, sir.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And there's a supporting documentation. Still with 141, decrease in undesignated fund balance of $20,307.39. Increase in expenses. She's itemized there. Medical personnel. It looks like salary kind of stuff.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
also reserve money. This is where our nurses have worked the 10 care program, where we get stipends back from that, and the board has allowed them to get a stipend for the last few years because they have raised that money.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, they deserve it. Very good. I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And that amount was $19,739.83. No, that's the next one. I'm sorry. I'm already on the next one. I'm like Mach 2 with my hair on fire, right? All right. We're still in 141. Now we're $19,739.83. She's decreasing expenses and increasing expenses, so it's going from one line to another in the same account. This is Big City University. First I ever heard of that. Yeah.
That's our after-school program, and these are just moving expenses around. This is just kind of a pass-through grant.
Yep. I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing, Mayor? I'm sorry. Yeah, Mayor Davis.
Just while I think of it, not about the amendment, Susan, but the Big City University, does it end before school year ends?
They actually do stop before school is out, yes.
I'm trying to remember where the question came from recently, but somebody was saying that school's not out, but my after-school program has ended. What do I do? And I said, I don't know, but
Yes.
Mayor,
is it lack of money or what?
they also don't start till like after Labor Day.
That's correct.
Really?
Yeah.
Why doesn't it match? Just
I
not
don't
enough.
know all the details. We're not the director of that particular program. We just know that's how it works, but we don't really know exactly why. And I don't know if it's because at the beginning of the year, it takes a while for them to get people hired. We have to have the numbers, and we have to know how many kids are going to participate, so they know how many kids to hire. Mostly these are college students that are, actually working with the kids. So every year they have to have
15.
time to get the program up and running. And I would say that's why it starts late. I do not know why it ends early. I can find out for you, though.
That's
I
all right.
know
That's
who
the
to
first
call.
time I'd been asked that question, so I just happened to think to ask you. Thank you.
Well, $19,739.08. I mean, that program, if that's all it takes, that's not too much, right?
Well, that's just movement. The
Oh,
program's huge.
okay.
This is just what they're moving.
Do I have a motion and a second on this yet? All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on, there's the supporting documentation. And another school amendment.
You-
I'm just kidding with you.
It's a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
Increase in revenue, increase in expenses. She's itemized $3,095,158. And description there is Spark 4.0 grant, CTE supplies and equipment, and Innovative School Models grant. Anything you want to add to that?
Not really.
All
Just
right.
2 grants coming in.
Money coming in on grants. So I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And there's the supporting documentation. Next budget amendment She's decreasing her undesignated fund balance by $85,468.52, and she's increasing her expenses that she's itemized right there. Moving special education 10 care monies back to GPS budget. Anything on there you want to add? No? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And scroll through. There's our supporting documentation. Next budget amendment is increase in revenue and increase in expenses. So it's money coming in, 953,000 sharp. Local option sales tax. So you got more money, local option, and then BEP.
Right. This is in response to what the Finance Committee asked us to do moving forward, is if we saw that our revenue was coming in high, to go ahead and amend it to get it as close to what the actuals would be as possible. So, local option sales tax, we think will come in at about $500,000 high. And then our BEP, when we got we get a true up in January. So our BEP is quite a bit higher than what we knew when we did the budget last year. So we went ahead and trued both those up.
So you're putting it in building improvements.
Correct.
Did the school board decide what building improvements they want to spend 953,000 on?
Well, we've got capital outlay committee that's coming up on Thursday where they're actually earmarking it, but they felt like this was the best place to put this for
The
now.
only reason I ask is if they're moving this money over into an expense line in this current budget, which will go into, then they've got their request already coming in 2
Yeah.
weeks.
That's a good point. And we're working. We've not gotten this far. We haven't had our work session yet, but we do have a recommendation for what that will be. But I can't really speak to it until they approve it.
Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Slater, our chair of education, has a meeting scheduled for the 9th. Maybe we'll have some more detail by then.
Yes.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0.
Come on.
Mayor Davis.
Just a comment. That last one's the only one I understood. But the running total, all of those amendments increased revenue about $6 million, right?
I wouldn't know unless I read tape on that, Mayor Davis, but I would trust you.
I tried to eliminate the undesignated fund balances and all those things, but the ones that just said increasing revenue, I got a quick total of about $6 million,
Well,
which,
I know that for those grants, up almost close to $4 million of it,
Mhm.
right?
1.2.
That was the CTE grants.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that sounds probably about right.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. Thank you, Susan.
you so
Appreciate
much.
you getting all your stuff in by the end of the year.
I'm sorry this was such a heavy one.
Nah, that's all
It's
right.
heavy
That's
for
all
us,
right.
too.
It's better to do it now than the true up day. All right, next budget amendment is to roads, Fund 131. She is decreasing capital outlay and increasing basically from it's not, it's a different account, but unemployment compensation. Anyway, she's moving $3,685.44. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And there's the supporting documentation. And we'll get to the next budget amendment on page 27. Also, staying with roads, he's decreasing other charges, line 307 in communication by $1,657, and she's moving it to 506 liability insurance, covered deductibles for incidents over budget amount. All right, do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented from Commissioner Winters? I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next amendment, County Mayor, $5,909.18. He's decreasing the reserve account, and he's moving it over to building improvements and installation for intruder alarm system and knockbox at the archive building. I assume that 34510 is the archive reserve account.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Renee, though, before you go forward, that should be going into, it is going into the archives budget, so it'll show as an archives expense. And from memory, you had already approved one, and this is the additional amount, right?
Yeah.
You'd already done the alarm system, and this is to
The
add
one
those.
that Troy was talking about, right?
Right, and this is the other two things. I don't know why they weren't all together, but that's why you've got another amendment.
Very good. And if I remember correctly, we had plenty as a balance in there.
Yeah,
Like
you've got about
150,000 or something.
150,000.
I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next one. This is coming from Finance. $5,000. She's decreasing. Finance is county commission. This is a deductible from an insurance policy, right? 5,000.
This is for the water damage in the annex building and the health department.
But it's basically be
Yes,
our
the
deductible.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Hopefully that's it with the whole building water damage thing.
Hopefully.
Gosh. They tested you on that one, Mayor, I tell you.
Well, we've had two this year, and that's what's so complicated about it, and keeping them separate and up with what's happening there's
God.
been complicated.
Well, now they got a new roof, right? So it won't ever happen.
Got a new roof, we've got a pretty much renovated building, at least on the bottom floor and the
That's
first
funny.
floor and second floor.
Next budget amendment, now we're in fire, so we're in Fund 121. $26,535.33. He's decreasing expenses out of 790. All this is gonna be in the same account, and he's moving it over to 716 to purchase, this is a grant money, so I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next budget amendment. Now we're still in 121.
No, that's the backup. Last month, we did the approval for it, and they put it in the 790 line where they have other capital outlay expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Since this is a grant, it needs to be in its own line, so that's just the backup to show what they did originally. We're just moving it from the 790 into the 716 line.
So skip that one, that's just showing you
And
what
that's
you've
just your
already done.
backup.
Okay.
Voted extra.
Yeah. The brain. I should have put skip on here.
We just save that for later.
Exactly. All right, now we're on page 31, amendment that we will take up. Like I said, page 33.
Oh, that's mine. I'm trying to find 33 myself. Where is it? There it is. Oh.
Oh yeah, now you're bragging. huh?
Mark this down. Mark this.
Yeah, we're gonna get you a pocket protector tonight,
Mark
right?
this down.
All right, page 33, Election Commission decreasing expenses. She's moving from travel over to the Election Commission. I guess the commissioners over there had another meeting.
Pro meeting.
Huh, yeah. $355. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Then we get into medical examiner, $229.86. She's moving from travel over to drugs and medical supplies inside of her own account. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. $229.86, Mayor, on supplies. That seems like
A lot of expense.
not much to get her all the way to the end of June, but she knows better than we do. Next one, we are still in, okay, yeah, EMS, we're in 101. And decreasing expenses and increasing expenses, so he's going from one line to another. He's got $225. He's gonna take out of laundry and move it over to vehicle and equipment insurance. This, I guess, insurance is for the new vehicle that was brought online. All right. I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. We'll try to make this more interesting. There we go. Deanna Hewitt, Program Manager. Trying to remember, what is it? Southeast, yeah. All right. $3,500, and she is moving money from maintenance and repair over to tuition. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? We ought to read. Money's
Tuition and maintenance.
always do. Yeah, move the money out first and then move it over at second. Send her a block of instructions on. Not just kidding.
Yes.
The mayor was just testing to see if I was paying attention. Anyway, she's moving from tuition over to maintenance. That did seem kind of odd that, $3,500. I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Winters. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Then we get into the Polk County contract. And he is decreasing from, I had to make sure, he had decreasing from mileage 355. Did we?
Keeneland.
And he is increasing into 499.
Travel. And supply.
Yeah,
Mileage.
yeah. This is probation, by the way. So do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Commissioner Offer, please.
In Polk County contract, what are we paying for travel? What's that?
I assume it's probably from over there, because we have to go over there for those meetings, for the court things, sort of like they do here. They have to go to them over there.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware that we went over there.
Yes, we do.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
And I assume that's what that is.
No.
Anything else, Commissioner Alford? All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0.
Good.
All right, next one. 15,000. He is decreasing expenses out of 335 maintenance and repair, and he's moving it over to other supplies and material for fall ball. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. So I guess, Mayor, he's purchasing goods and material, whatever, here in May for this coming up fall, which is another budget.
I don't know if that's, how sometimes they use the same form again. I'm wondering if that should have said spring, but I don't know.
I mean,
Be buying stuff.
Needed supplies for
I guess-
balls.
where I'm going is kind of like what you did a few minutes ago, is if you're going to go ahead and buy this stuff now, can we take your budget down by 15,000?
I would assume take the word fall out and you got a correct statement, but I don't know that.
Whatever. Lori, remind me to ask him if he's purchasing stuff for fall, because if his budget request has that in there, and I'll have to go back and look at it, then that's 15,000, Mayor, you can reduce out of his budget request. All right. We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Staying on the same account, he's going to other charges. What's the reason? Moving funds to cover expenses which don't fall into, so this is an audit thing? All right. I totally don't understand. $2,000 from 435 over to 599. See,
Within his
I have a
budget.
motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Passes 5-0. Sticking with the same account, this time at $600, he's decreasing expenses out of 335, and he's moving it over to 307 to cover the shortfalls caused by upgrades needed to accept credit card payments at concession stand. I guess he's not buying enough hot dogs.
They're-
Yeah,
looking in their new budget on that same subject, there is a cost to doing that.
but hopefully, the number of hot dogs being sold by credit card outweighs the cost.
We would probably sold the same amount of hot dogs, they would just had to drop cash with them, but.
Pay extra.
I knew he was going to, I walked
but
right into that one.
It's a
Have
convenience, but it
have a
does
motion
cost.
From Commissioner Alford, have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Opposed, say no. I speak fluent English. Passes 5-0. And we're still with the same account.
41, yeah.
This time we are decreasing expenses out of 312 contract private agencies, and he's moving it over to food supply. Money, food to cover the shortfall in supply. I thought he had plenty of money. All right, but he's coming out contract private agency. Is that we were talking about that one the other day? Is that where he pays the umpires and stuff? He's a private agency out of right.
I'm not sure. I know that we've been trying to move those umpires so they're in a different area, because it also helps us with the workers' comp. I would have to look and see what he's paying out of there.
All right, so he's moving $8,000 out of private agencies over to food supply. Let's buy those hot dogs. All right, do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented from Commissioner Slater? I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Commissioner Alford.
I was just wondering what that private agencies are, $8,000. That's a lot of money in private agencies without knowing what it's all about.
Lori, will you ask him what the private agency means in his world?
They're decreasing that.
Is there a line item in his budget for private agencies?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me, but if you look in their budget request for next year, it'll tell you what's paid out of that line.
Okay, I'll look at
Uh,
it.
Football.
Only thing
I
I
don't
can see,
remember
only thing I
either.
can think of is umpires or refs or something like that. I mean, because they're not employees, right?
Big rest.
But we'll find out later. I mean, Commissioner Alford.
And that's a bunch of money going back into food supplies, too.
$8,000.
Yeah. To cover shortfall.
I assume he's going to buy $8,000 worth of food between now and June 30th.
Well, it says here, moving funds to cover shortfall. In
But he
other
didn't
words,
budget.
they're out of money
So
evidently.
he didn't budget enough. Well, I'll look at the account analysis, see how or the expense
One
report.
thing that she's trying to do, that they're trying to do, is to prevent a lot of this stuff being on the true-ups. They're trying to make sure that they've got things paid out of the right lines, and to get it so that I don't have to put them on the true-ups that you don't like to do.
Sounds fair.
Sounds good. Do I have a motion second on this? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Still with the
You'll like this one, though.
$1,244, and he's moving from $4.99 over to $7.99. Moving monies to cover pickleball service.
Oh,
You'll like this.
surface. A lot of money.
1,204.
If you've seen
It
it,
must have been
pickleball
over, it
courts
must have been
have
over
been
what he
done.
budgeted.
They look good. I think Louis mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. And then we have the lighting in the new budget for it. So
Yeah, but didn't HCI granted one as well?
Well, that was my, getting ready to ask the same question.
Yeah,
Chairman.
Commissioner Alford.
Did the HCI funds not cover the pickleball surface?
this implies that it was $1,200 short. I don't know. $5,000 short, yeah.
So he found two places. Okay. But that is a good question. Is it a shortage out of HCI? In other words, HCI money only got him so far, and he needs his own money to finish up the job.
That's the point I was trying to make,
Yeah.
wondering, questioning that situation.
All right, we'll look
Oh,
into
he
that.
had, what, 40?
all the amount, but I will say this, I did receive a telephone call last week from a granted organization for the current cycle that we're in at HCI. And they said, well, what about the cost of goods and services? Since we completed our application and submitted it, we're now gonna be about $4,000 or $5,000 short. I said, I'm sorry, we don't have any provisions at this time to take care of those items, so they're gonna have to find a way to come up with additional money to complete the project that they submitted and was awarded. So I say all that to say that perhaps he ran into the same issue.
Well, one, we need to find out if this is an HCI project that's just under budgeted. And if it is, I think we may need to revisit, because I'd rather HCI pay for the full cost, because I know we didn't use up all HCI and we got money going over to the next year instead of using property tax. But we'll find out, Commissioner Alford.
What
So,
do you wanna do
Mr.
with
What are we
Chairman,
gonna
Yeah.
do to find out?
Lori and I will find out tomorrow if it was an HCI project, right? Or do you already know?
Well, I know that they've been awarded a couple of grants for pickleball out there. I don't know if this is something that was a maintenance project, to one of the courts that was a few years old, so I really can't speak to that. I don't know what this charge is for.
So, I mean, yeah, we have, how many pickleball courts do we have now?
Well, they just
Four.
finished the second. They got 4 now.
So we don't know which pickleball court he's referring to.
But
And
it
it's,
has to be the
That's
new
the
one,
new
because
ones.
they just resurfaced it.
I don't,
Well, they could, now the old one, from my understanding, was splitting a little bit too. They might have went back and patched it or something.
HCI awarded 2 courts, awarded a resurfacing, and awarded new courts.
Yeah.
So we've had several awards out there recently. I just can't speak to the fact of whether or not this expense is included in one of those projects.
Commissioner Slater.
if we look at truing up their funds so they don't have to use taxpayers' money, are we gonna look at truing up all the funds, like the call that,
I think that would be a policy thing, right? Because right now, HCI, once you award the amount, that's it, right? So we'd have, to, I think, go visit the policy and say,
Yeah.
if we can, I'm assuming it's because of inflation, right? The cost of goods and services went up beyond what they asked for and what was awarded. But you answer your question, I don't see how you couldn't. But it would definitely be a policy change. If there's money in HCI. Yeah. If it turns out that it is an HCI policy, Mayor, I ask you this, I'm trying to think how HCI can be, how his money out of his budget can be compensated out of HCI. It's an accounting thing, but HCI is its own little world.
Well, most of the
I
time,
mean, my
when
motive
you-
here is I want HCI to pay as much as HCI can.
Well, the majority of the time, when you award these from HCI, these departments have to pay for them out of their budget first.
Right, but they
And
get
then
reimbursed.
They get the money back, and we put it back, we do a budget amendment to move
There
it
you go,
back
that's what
in
we
there.
can do. You haven't reimbursed him on anything yet, have you?
Again, there's been 3 pickleball, grants awarded, so I don't know if this expense is covered by any of those 3 awards. You see what I'm saying? I promise I'm not trying to be difficult, but my memory, I mean, this, like I said, we funded one 2 cycles ago, one of them was 3 or 4 cycles ago, and the other one was about 5 cycles ago, so, I can't give you any more information.
That's fine.
so they don't have a current, they did not receive one in the last fall.
Correct.
So they don't have a current one.
Correct. I can't recall, though, if their last one that was extended because of COVID, the deadline for completion may have been extended. It could fall under that one. I need to go back and review to see if they have completed theirs.
Let's roll it.
Let's just not table it, but hold it over to the next meeting. I got a lot of questions.
All right,
Well, can I just say this?
Mayor,
It's a reimbursement situation. They've done the work. They need to pay the bills before HCI will pay anything. So I think this gives him the ability to pay those bills. And if you want to increase the amount of the award then in the meantime where that we get a bigger reimbursement, that would be great. But if I understand it right, they don't pay us anything until we've spent the money, and if he needs $5,000 in order to pay the bills, you need to approve that, and then you guys can do whatever you want to with getting the HCI amount.
that's true, but
If you know, and it's gonna keep sitting there, and HCI will never reimburse it, because it hadn't been paid to reimburse.
that would be later on. So, yeah, because the next one, is the same thing. He's got
It's
a bill sitting on his desk that needs to be paid.
Yeah, and it's about $4,500 short is what this implies. And then
All right.
you may need to increase the grant request if that's possible, but you're gonna have to change policy and everything probably before that can happen.
Oh, it's gonna be
and-
fun. We have a motion and a second on this? I have a motion from Commissioner, who wants to make a motion on this wonderful amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Commissioner Alford, like Mayor says, he's gotta pay a bill. I'll make a recommendation to you later on that, policy committee take this up on, requests that go over how we deal with that. Cause that's gonna be complicated, like Commissioner Slater inferred. If we can, we can, if we can't. But right now, he's gotta pay a bill. And in order to get reimbursed, you gotta have your bills. So he's up, yeah. So we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none,
Well,
please.
I go along with paying the bill, but I think we need to bring this back and discuss it quite heavily. There's several questions about this whole thing, in my opinion. Whether we do it, pay the bill, then bring it back up or something.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, right now, we get this passed, and we'll extend an invitation to Andy, for the next finance, or we can call a finance meeting beforehand if we want. But at the June meeting, we'll have him here and we can go over this in a lot more detail. So if you'll help me out on that? Yeah, yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And like Cindy, Commissioner Slater said, the next one's pretty much the same thing. It's just coming from a different one. So I have a motion from Commissioner Alford on the previous one that we just voted on. Please.
You mentioned the lights for the courts were in this coming year's budget. Is that gonna be out of ARC money, or we're gonna pay it out of the budget?
God, I think from
Could we add-
memory, it's in ARP, I believe, but don't hold me to that. It's either 189 or ARP. I sort of have a personal threshold there because of all the reporting, but I'm pretty sure that one made ARP, I think.
That's what I was gonna suggest, if we could
Yeah.
put it on ARP money and not take it out of taxpayer.
I've put a lot of those little things in ARP, but if they're one-time capital amounts and are over certain amounts, I'm putting them in ARP. That makes sense? So I think that's the answer to your question.
It is.
What's this telling me?
That 800's in that.
800's in there for park lights.
That's Elrod, though.
That's Elrod.
That's Elrod.
Right.
I don't remember what I
Uh,
No, it might be in the 189.
Anyway, I'm not sure. It's in one or the other. I know it's in there. It's for pickleball and BMX improvements for the national tournament that's coming this summer. There somewhere. I'll check and let you know for sure which one.
I just think, agree, like you say, if we can get an ARP money, that's the place we need to put it, you know. If we only have 800 for the Elrod Park, then we need to make sure we've added that in there too, you know, somewhere.
We're bringing you an update probably tonight of ARP, an updated plan, not an authorization to spend, but I've got to get the plan updated because of all these things that we are putting in it that aren't in the plan. And so I'll double check and make sure that that's there. It's $50,000 or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's
but,
about what it should
yeah.
be. Okay.
So you've already approved road striping, for example. That's not in the plan, so I've got to get the plan updated. And I think we'll have it ready to bring tonight. And it'll show you, it'll answer your question for sure.
All right, do I have a motion and a second? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
We don't have a motion.
Oh, we
Oh,
don't
I
have,
asked.
we don't
You
have a
said-
motion to
No.
second. We don't have a motion to second.
I have a
Which is
motion
this-
from Commissioner Winters, I have a
wait,
second
wait,
from
this
Commissioner
40
Alford,
This is for 44.
page 43.
Right.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? On page 43 of his amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote. Aye. Opposed, say no. Passes 5-0.
Now,
Moving
this
on.
next one answers your question about umpires. It's $399.
So that makes
$3.90.
the mystery of contract agencies even more pertinent.
Right.
When I go when I go back across the street, I can pull up to see what we've paid out of the 312.
Thank you so much. All right, so he's decreasing expenses out of 452 utilities, $9,000, and he's moving it over to other contract services, $399, and this is for umpires. So he's probably the only one that his utilities are going down.
Very few are going up, which is why I don't understand the ones that are. It's a big question
We'll
as
be
I'm
talking
going
about
through the
that.
budgets.
We'll be talking about that here pretty soon.
Right.
All right, we have a motion to accept the amendment. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Slater? I have a second from Commissioner Winters. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please,
You know,
Commissioner Winters.
He is saying the number of kids playing softball, baseball continues to increase. There's just
Yeah,
more population out there playing.
yeah, in the rec league, yeah.
Point out. More
Any further
umpires.
discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Moving on to the next amendment. And he is still in the same account. He's moving $1,000 out of 335, maintenance and repair, and going over to uniforms. Increase to, because of cost of, I guess the jerseys are more expensive now. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And we get into the VCIF grant. This is the one that they came before us a couple of months ago, right, Renee?
I believe that it is.
It
the
is.
one that-
It is. They did a presentation on where they were going to spend it. This is the first year's allotment, correct? And it's going to be over 3 years. This is in the packet that they sent that goes into the grant. You read all that, you're a better
And-
man than me.
And in the new budget, you will have a year-long budget for this same grant. It's like 200,000, but it's a separate grant that is offset by revenue.
But right now, he's going to do other supplies and materials and data processing. And then eventually they're going to buy drones or something. Anyway, we have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Yes.
Can I ask a question on these grants?
Yes.
I have it turned on. What if instead of putting everything in there, we put the first page and then the page that breaks down how they can spend it?
Absolutely. 'Cause
Instead of having 80-something pages added to the budget amendment, you'd have 2 or 3.
make it so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we started reading it the other day, and I basically went to the guts of it, like the money part.
Yeah.
And the 3-year breakdown is the part that I was cared about. So we get to scroll, all the way until still scrolling.
83.
83. Thank you. That takes us to the Bradley County Sheriff's Drug Fund. So we're in Fund 122. He is decreasing his fund balance, and he is moving it to utilities. But he's moving it out of his drug fund to pay for utilities
In the drug fund.
in. I didn't know the drug fund had utilities, but that's fine.
They do.
Sorry.
Probably where they work.
But anyway, do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. But he has to, during the audit, he has to account for how he spends that drug fund.
Yeah, the drug fund used to be a pretty elaborate budget that covered everything, and a few years ago they took salaries out because it's a dwindling thing now. It's sort of been taken over by the opioid fund that you'll start seeing in next year's budget.
Mhm.
So now it's still got expenses in it, just doesn't have salaries.
Next budget amendment, he's decreasing expenses. Now we're back over to Fund 101 in the workhouse. He's moving money out of deputies, 15,000, and he's putting it in food supply. Sorry, I'm reading the thing here. Almost like all caps. I really don't like moving money out of a salary line item though. But she needs it in 422 out of the Justice Center, which is a different account. All right. Read that.
With these accounts.
Yeah. Fifteen thousand coming out of deputy's line. And this you're looking at.
Yeah. There was a huge increase in the food contract.
And that just gets her to June 30th.
Yeah, there's a huge increase in next year's budget too. Two huge increases are food and health care for inmates. So every time you see the billboard that says, "Have you ever been in the jail, join this class action lawsuit?" How much do we need to spend for food and health care for inmates to make that issue go away? But it's going, and the food contract had been in place for a while, so this is finally the inflation hitting it. And so, yeah, it's big in the next year's budget.
Yeah. I thought they renegotiate. All right. Well, they gotta do it.
It's two issues we
think
can't do anything about.
Moving it out of deputies though.
Well, that just happens to be where they have
That's their budget.
the money.
Do I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. So if you approve that one, I'm assuming you're going to approve this next one because it's coming out of deputies 30,000 and moving into food supply, except it's a different account. I have a motion to accept the amendment as presented from Commissioner Alford. I have a second from Commissioner Slater. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. So those two amendments, I'm assuming that's the only two, right? Totals 45,000 going into inmate food supply, which I'd be interested in. I'll find this out what their monthly average is. 45,000 should get, in addition to what they already budgeted.
The rate went like way up though. The rate per
In the
meal
middle of a
went way
budget
up.
though, or the end of a budget?
Well, it started January, I believe. It's been going on. It's just now running out of money because of it.
I don't remember that contract coming to us though. where it went up that much. All right, we're on page 86. Are we into services rendered yet?
Not yet.
All right, decrease in revenue from 54110. What's he doing? Transporting other students over to motor vehicle. This is grant money that was awarded for mental transport. Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Winters. I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Mayor?
Now the top line is a revenue line where we get that
No.
new,
No, it's an expense.
do
She's
what?
got she's got the wrong, yeah, it's an expense.
Is a revenue line where we have a mental health grant coming into. And a good thing, they haven't had to do that many mental health transports. And so there's money there, additional money that hasn't been spent. And Steve was told that it needs to be spent this budget year or else. And so they have approved doing what he's proposing here. So he's buying a mental health transport vehicle. That can be used for other things too, but
Food?
no, I mean, it can be used to haul other things, I guess you would say, but,
They're gonna eat good over there. Oh,
Do I have a motion and a second on this? I do. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Or Susan. Okay, on this one, he is decreasing a reserve account restricted for administrative justice going into other supplies, and it's still in general fund. And they were so nice to put it in the balance, even though they wrote it in after the amendments passed. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment from Commissioner Winters? I have a second from Commissioner Alford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. And there's the reporting documentation. And this one is a decrease in revenue and increase in expenses of $1,774.33.
That's an expense, not a revenue. This is what she gets when she copies.
right. It's the litter grant, and they're moving money basically from a personnel line to a supply line.
All right, so where it says revenue on the top there, strike that and put expense.
Right.
Didn't catch that. Because by the time we got to this page, we're worn out. All right, the letter grant, Commissioner Mason. We're going to move it from maintenance personnel over to instructional supplies. Do I have a motion to accept the amendment? I have a motion from Commissioner Slater. I have a second from Commissioner Winters. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0.
Now we're at the service charges.
Now we're at services rendered.
Yes.
Okay, that starts on page 93 and goes all the way to the end of the budget amendment packet. We're gonna take these all up. Right? Take them as one motion? All right. We have a motion to accept the following amendments as a package. Have a motion from Commissioner Alford. Have a second from Commissioner Mason. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. That concludes the budget amendments in record-breaking time.
Whoa.
And we'll go, and we had a lot of them. It's that time of the year. They're trying to get them in before the end of the year. And again, thank you, Susan, for getting yours over. All right, on the agenda, we'll go quick through this. I know we've kind of been talking about the ratio study for the last couple of months. We know why it happens. We know how it happens. But one of the things I was hoping I wanted to bring to the Finance Committee and ultimately the full commission meeting, we know that it impacts us at the county level and our revenue. We've talked about that. But in our conference call with the comptroller's office the other day, they touched on it briefly, but I wanted to expand on that. And I talked to Gabe at CTASK, and he sent me this document, appraisal ratio applied to tax relief programs. So it's not just the county, that is impacted by this ratio study is also those programs that help the low-income elderly, if I say that correctly, disabled homeowners, as well as disabled veterans and their spouses. So, in short, summary is this ratio study applies to their programs as well. So if they were paying, I'm gonna just use easy numbers. This is just an example. I'm not picking anybody out. If their tax liability or their expense was $100, we'll just use easy number. Now it's 130 because of this ratio study. So I just wanted you guys to know it's not just us, the county, that's impacted by this. Some of our citizens. And Stanley has a document on who all that is, and the trustee will have to apply that as well. Any questions on that? I mean, the ratio study just has a really black eye, in my opinion. Probably shouldn't have said that, but I don't care. All right. Next is outstanding purchase orders by account. Mayor, we're getting obviously close to the end of the year, the budget. The next thing is schools hearing, and then your proposal. As we were going through this year, Laura and I were making notes that a lot of purchase orders that are submitted, I guess, or whatever, they're in this budget right. They're in this budget right here. You submit a purchase order, and you don't get the goods or services that you're buying, so you move it over to the next budget. How do we find out?
The money is in a, I can't remember what the name of the account is, but from one year to the next, it will hold over there. We have several that are holding because of this. If the budget amendment is a year old, we ask them, is this purchase in process? If it's not, then we shut it down. We liquidate it. But if there is a purchases in process, we hold them. They come out of that liability account. 14800, I believe, is where those purchase orders rolls. So it encumbers the money in this year, and we spend it in next. When we do Gary's proposal, when we do your proposal, when we do the final budget proposal, those estimated expense columns, that expense will be, I mean, it's in there. It shows it. You'll have the actual amount spent, and you'll have encumbered amounts in there that's holding it.
So that encumbered amount is potential expenditures in the next budget.
Well, it'll come out of your basically your cash money because it's up there in that liability. But there's a lot of times that once we get into the budget, these purchase orders go away. There'll be, I mean, like when I go to close the year this year, there'll probably be some prior POs that we will liquidate just before I close the year. That when audit comes in, it will lower that. That's the reason a lot of times your fund balance is bigger than what we project.
Right. And that's kind of where I was getting at is when you're going through the year and you're looking at expenses, and then you have, let's say, item 1, 2, and 3, just to keep it easy. And in the budget that we passed, we basically said, okay, buy item 1, 2, and 3. And you kind of forget because it's out of sight, out of mind to a certain degree that there was a purchase order for item 4. And then now you have the money, or you always had the money. It's not that you're getting new money. It's just now it's moving over to a new budget. But you kind of forget that item 4 is kind of out there. My question, I guess, what I was after was, and you just kind of answered it, I guess, is how much money is tied up in purchase orders in the current budget that could potentially be used in the next budget?
Until the year closes, I don't know. We, especially now, and it sounds so trite to continue to say it, is that it's harder to get the goods and services in. EMA is a perfect example. They ordered a vehicle. It has just now come in. I think they ordered it in last budget year. It has just now come in. So we're constantly having to watch that. So I can't tell you exactly how much, but that money is encumbered in the 22-23 budget. When you look at your reports, when it's spent, it's not going to show on your 23-24 because it's encumbered in the prior year. It shows as an encumbrance.
Right. And that makes it somewhat challenging to look at the expense report and remember that there's more expense, potential expense than that could be at that account. But you're saying that it's pretty, I mean, all these purchase orders from all these accounts, you know, you can't add them all up and say there's over $1 million worth of purchase orders outstanding right now.
I could probably look
I was just using easy numbers. I mean,
well, I mean, you can look and see at one point, but we're constantly paying bills and stuff, so that's constantly moving. I mean, I can look at a point and say, as of right this second, this is how much money is PO'd.
okay. So this is more like the end of June, you'll have a better number.
When I close the year at the end of August, I'll have a better number.
And then we go back and we can that's,
We send
so
out,
purchase orders that don't get used ever, you tied up the money, now that money's freed up, you can
we
put it back
and
into
when
it.
when we liquidate it, it goes back into the fund that purchase order was brought out of. And they've not got it the last quarter simply because I've got a new employee in that's not done it. But we send out every quarter. We send out, here's the purchase orders that you have opened. These purchase orders are coming up on their year date. Are you going to use them or can we liquidate them? If they have a purchase in process, we can't liquidate it. I mean, if they're in the middle of buying a car,
I get it, yeah.
liquidate it. But if it's one that they don't come back and say, oh no, we've got something on the way, we close it out. And it dumps back in. If it's in general fund, it goes back in general fund balance. If it's in one of the special funds, it goes back into their fund balance.
And I'm just saying, it would be nice to know what those numbers are.
It does make it another one of the complication things at budget proposals. Usually that changes from my proposal till you actually approve the budget. We have the better, that middle column in your budget proposal is an important column because it'll say estimated totals. And then we close out the year-old ones unless they're in progress. If it's a project in progress, there's a few exceptions, but usually if it's a project in progress or if something that's on order like the ambulance, it goes back two budgets. Everything else gets closed out at some point. We also, what's the deadline for new purchase orders
The cutoff for purchase orders right now is the 15th, which means
of May?
they've got to get any purchase order, anything tied up that they want tied up before the end of the year.
See,
Only way.
when I'm trying to put together revenues, it's not just about new revenue, it's about what's not spent this
That's
year.
where I was going.
And that's what I'm talking about. That column in your budget is important.
It's
And
gonna
we have
tie
a
in-
better,
I get it.
better feel of that in June. After I've done my proposal, we get as close a one as we can, but usually that number will get smaller. And, you know, you'll hear me talk about, well, we budgeted 45 million, only spent 43 million. I don't know what that is today, but at some point we'll know that. Won't know it for sure until the year's closed out, like she said, but that is one of the moving things. But is that middle
agree.
column?
I get it. And you guys at the schools have the same thing, but we don't ever see, obviously. But that'll come into play here in a second. It'd just be good to know because the budget's getting tighter and tighter. Anyway, that probably way too much on purchase orders, but it would be good to know those numbers, but you don't know them right now. Next one on is item C, property tax revenue projections. We'll go over this real quick because we do it every May. This came out of the assessor properties. The number that you really need to look at right there on page 3, by the way, is $3,85,832,511. That's his assessment. Again, like I said last year, and it's always the case, this is fluid. It's always changing, but you have to pick a point in time where you basically take a snapshot, and we try to always make it right around the end of April, 1st of May, that we take that snapshot, and that basically tells you what the assessments are. The mayor and Renee will use that number with their revenue projections. And obviously the ratio study comes into play. Just FYI, put it on yours, sorry. If you're comparing from year 22 and you have year 23 in front of you, and I can send you this email later, year 22 was 3,082,566,342. when you do all the math and calculations, that tells you what your growth is. So I just wanted you guys to have that. If you have any questions, let me or Lori know. But that's kind of what, again, only referring to property tax. Obviously, property tax, this is the entire county. You have the same thing for the two fire funds as well. It's the same concept, same formula. Any questions on that? I don't want to belabor the point and bore you to death, but it is important. It's not the only source of revenue we have, but it is the main one. Would you agree, Mayor? It's one of the property taxes, the main funding revenue source that we have with the county budget. Last thing of note of interest is that this tells us also what the value of a penny is. If you take that assessment number and what CTAS always says up at school is move over 4 digits, so that would make the value of a penny 308,000, which is good for our county because I remember when I first got on here in 14, it was in the low 220, 225. So over the last 8 years, we've grown the value of a penny from basically 220 up to 308. Any questions on that? I know we've.
Is compared to how much was it last year? You know offhand, Renee?
I do not.
Do you have that? You've
Uh,
got last year's appraisal there.
Yeah, it wasn't much different.
So not much difference means not much growth, if any. Does that make sense?
But over the 8 years is less.
Oh, yeah, it's been great over the years, but compared to last year and doing the budget, I've been saying for a long time, it doesn't look like much, if any, growth this year is the problem. Right, Susan?
You guys,
Except for sales tax.
well,
But
sales tax is another one I guess you guys are going to work on here shortly. According to the calendar, you guys have a revenue thing. From what I'm gathering, sales tax is pretty good because price of goods and services on the market and sales tax is the percentage of the total. So if people are spending more money at Walmart, that helps the state out.
yeah, that was why they had a $500,000 amendment earlier for schools. Of course, ours isn't near as big as schools, but that one line is up, that's for sure, a good percentage.
Okay, so that's the property tax revenue assessment that we go over at first finance meeting of May. Any questions, Commissioner Slater, Commissioner Mason? I don't want to go over that too fast, but I also don't want to bore you to death. Right? Last, budget calendar. The next item on the budget calendar is the school budget hearing, which is scheduled for May 15th. And that is that a voting session? Yeah. Tonight's voting, then we'll have, right, so if you'll put that on the agenda, but it's kind of already on there by default. And then we get to ask Susan lots and lots and lots of questions. All right. But we'll have the education committee meeting before then, as so you get to have the same question twice. Anything else? That is anything other business. Mayor, you have anything? Oh, Commissioner Slater, please.
Thank you. I would like to request that we get an update from Bradley Cleveland Community Services, Ocoee Outreach, and I can't remember the third one, who received ARP money.
Family Promise?
Family Promise is the third one, as to where they are in their process of using their money.
Absolutely.
And I don't care if it's finance or the full commission. Either one's fine with me.
You got that? An update from Community Service. Their money is for the emergency shelter, right? And we're going halvesies, so to speak, with the city on that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they're matching the amount we do. When the development district talked to them, I'm telling you from memory here, but they're in the, they had went out and got an architect or whatever that didn't meet the criteria, again, ARP. And so they had to kind of back up and start over. So that's probably still in the architectural phase, but the 200,000 is to make that building an extension of the shelter. The other one, I think we're all paid out on everything except that, no Oakway Outreach. Family Promise.
I saw them in the account now, it's 89,000.
I still would like for them to
Yeah.
come give an update as to how they spent the money like
That's fine.
the other agencies have.
And Community Services won't be able to do that yet, but they will probably be the only ones still going into the new budget year.
He can still come and say that.
Okay.
So,
That's fine.
Lori, just to make it easy, if you can extend an invitation, our next finance meeting is June 5th, 2023 at 11:30. We'd be happy to have them here. Commissioner Alford.
Would it not be better to bring them in for a work session instead of a finance, because that way the whole commission gets to hear it?
If they can make it, whatever their schedules allow.
I would work a work session in, I think would be more pertinent.
I agree with that.
Anything else? If not, we are adjourned.